of July at County Hall, 2 p.m. So the first item on the agenda is to note the membership of the committee, which is on the agenda, and everybody's here, should be here, except we've got one apology, which is next.
We have apologies from Councillor Scott, thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Scott, right. We've got the minutes of the previous meeting, which have been circulated. Obviously, many of you weren't on that committee, including myself. Just one thing to note, the circulated minutes included the forward plan, which shouldn't have been included, so that will be removed, just so you're aware of that. Any questions or comments on that? We're happy to approve as far as we can. Councillor Dale?
Yeah, can I just say that I think I'm the only person who was actually at that meeting.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, David Thorne was. Just to say, on page 16, one of the things they've said is about having representation from the farmers on the actual steering group. And I wondered whether that had been taken forward.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll follow it on. Yeah.
Sorry, will you find?
I will follow it up.
No, don't worry, I know.
Oh, you know, yeah.
No, but I didn't know if you had.
Okay, well,
I will.
We'll make it that.
Just.
I will.
Thank you. We'll make it that's be followed up. Right. Are we happy with this? Apart from that point, okay. Next, disclosure of members' interests. Anybody? No. Next page is 2128, forward plan of cabinet decisions, just for information.
Yeah, this document is in two parts. It's the forward plan of decisions to be taken by cabinet. The first part is the decisions that have been taken by cabinet. And what this allows members to do is to look at the decisions that cabinet have made in the meetings since the last meeting of the scrutiny committee, so that the committee can then decide whether or not there are any reports that you want to have a look at in the future to determine whether or not the implementation of those decisions are as they thought they would be set out in the original proposals. So what would normally happen is, if there was an item that you want to look at, you would probably give it 3, 6, 9 months to have a look at it again to see whether or not it's actually on the path that it was set out on. And if by looking at it, you feel as though that there needs to be tweaks, you put it back in place, if you know what I mean, then that would be the purpose of looking at it again. But generally speaking, your work programme is quite full, so it would only be in exceptional circumstances where you would want to do that. But that's the purpose of including that on the agenda for you to do.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, and then moving on to the main report, we have a report on provision of food waste services to households under simple recycling, and this can be introduced by the cabinet member, Councillor Riddle. So,
thank you, Chairman. Well, this is the result of implementing some of the Environment Act of 2021 and the simpler recycling policy. And what it states is that all authorities in England have got to provide or offer to all households a weekly food waste recycling collection. The problem is that there is new burdens funding, etc. But if you look back at the original budget, we lost nearly £4 million in rural service delivery grant already. And then with this, officers have done various models, have done 3 options, but to do all of the county, the money that they're offering us is basically £1.5 million short of what it'll cost. So what has been modelled here is the best case scenario for the amount of money that we've got, which will increase the recycling rate by, I think, 3.65%. I think at the moment we are the second highest in the Northeast in recycling rate in any case. That's not to say that we don't want to be the best, which we certainly do. The other options, if you look through the papers, increase the recycling rate very slightly, but it's not a lot in percentage terms. So basically, officers have got vehicles on order. The vehicles are, we've got a bit of slack, I think, from the system because I think the vehicles are due to arrive sort of Christmas time, and the latest ones, I think the very last ones by beginning of March. So everything is in hand at the moment to implement option 1 on the papers.
Okay, thank you much for that overview. Any thing to add before we go to questions from officers?
Are the vehicles electric?
Sorry?
Sorry?
Are the vehicles on order electric?
Not.
No, the ISOs are the small refuse collection vehicles.
Okay,
Why there's no electric available?
It's basically when you look at the on the market, electric vehicles wouldn't have the capacity and the mileage and the payloads that we would require, and the capital cost of them is also significantly higher than the capital cost of what we class as a traditional diesel HGV. Our fleet generally at the moment, whilst we're looking at greening the fleet, within our fleet, the biggest electric vehicle we have will be a transit van size because of those pressures on the surface.
thank you. Councillor Sesford?
Thank you, Chair. John, there's a legal obligation to do this, so we haven't got funding for it, so we're not going to meet one legal obligation. We are going to appeal the DEFRA, is that right?
We have appealed to DEFRA, and unfortunately, just like the spending review, we're supposed to know the outcome of that by spring. We're now well into summer, heading into autumn. We haven't got the definite result of that. We haven't got the result of the appeal, although, you know, letters have been written and they are being pressed for an answer.
I didn't think you had the result of the
No,
appeal,
no,
so
we haven't.
what I'm going to say is why aren't we waiting before we commit ourselves to one of these options? Because what happens if we get what we want from the appeal? I'm not saying that we're going to, but what happens if we get what we want from the appeal? We might need to change the options that we're taking. So would it not be? I know you said we've been waiting till the spring and it's already near the autumn, so it might take another year to come across.
Well, it wouldn't be prudent, I suggest, to commit to purchasing vehicles when we don't know how much money we're going to get. The other thing is that, you know, this modelling has been done on the results of the trial which we did, which indicated the percentage of people that actually take up the offer of the food waste recycling. And it's been about, I think I'm correct in saying, about 40% of the people have taken up the option. And it's we're not talking about big quantities here, you know, we're talking about 1.3 kilograms a week, you know, we're not talking about massive amounts. And the other thing, you know, from a totally practical point of view, there's lots of people don't have much food waste because they've got, you know, a dog, pet dog and things. You know, there's various ways that the food disappears.
No, I'm not saying that I'm sorry, Chair. I'm not saying that I'm disagreeing with the option. I'm just wondering if it would not be more sensible to wait. Well, I'm going to say wait. Of course, you don't know it's going to be another 6 months. Of course, that's one of the problems. Wait until such time as you know what the appeal is. Are you going to get the money or you're not?
We don't know whether we're
I know,
going to
but
or
you'll
not.
find
So
out when the appeal.
what we've done is we've ordered vehicles to deliver option 1, which is what we know that we are likely to have. We haven't got all of that money yet. We've got most of that money that was offered.
Right, so we've got the 2.9 million
Yeah,
pounds.
I understand.
So the approach that we've taken is that we know that there's that statutory obligation to deliver the service from April. We've been allocated New Burn's capital funding to support us to do that, not as much as what we would have needed. What we're able to do is to put in place the best service that we can with the funding that we have had confirmed, which is what we're doing for April. And when you look at all of the options, the area that we've selected as 1A and put forward as being supported by Cabinet is common to all of those rollouts.
Yeah.
So no matter what level of funding we might get in addition to that, this would always be at the core of that service.
Yeah, I've got Councillor Dodd next. I'll come back to you. Councillor Dodd?
Yeah, like many around this table, I'm new to this scrutiny committee. This means I've been on every scrutiny committee over the years. So, plead ignorance. Where does it all go? Because when some of us are so new to this, food waste, yes, I've got a dog, it doesn't need everything. Where does it all go, and what value does it have? And I'm obviously we're looking at do bins there. I read about Newcastle and the rat problems they have there. Any of that come into the radar?
So at the moment, sorry.
Well, you know, the stuff that's going to go down the road with digestion, well, that's going to go out to tender. So we haven't got, commercially, we haven't got the results of where it's actually going to go yet. I think correct to say that.
That's correct. We're committed to delivering all of the waste through our waste contract sewers. There's a market testing exercise to be undertaken that will determine where they then take it to, because we'll be taking it to the transfer stations for bulk loading to end destination.
So part of the capital funding that was there was to put the bait in, etc., a seat burn and things like that. What was the other question? Where the waste generally goes?
Where's generally? I mean, what does that have a value?
So
Yes.
So at the moment, all of that waste goes in your general waste bin, and it goes off to the energy from waste plant where it gets burned. We generate electricity from that. This material that's separated will be taken to effectively the same kind of bulk loading areas, but put in a different bay, and it will then be taken to an anaerobic digestion facility. There are several within the tiny kind of Weir Durham area. There's ones further afield as well that we could make use of. There's actually a planning consent for one in Northumberland as well, in the Erlington Road landfill site, that, you know, haven't been developed yet, but may well be in the not distant future. So there's plenty of facilities to make use of. The process itself is what's already used quite routinely for animal byproducts and for sewage treatment kind of processing, where basically you take organic material, it's homogenised, it's put in a big tank, natural bugs break it down, and it generates methane. The methane can be extracted from that. You can use that to renewable energy. So you can use that for generating electricity, for heat, or you can actually put it directly into the gas grid. And that's the best offer, because that obviously then value that material into natural gas grid. The other remaining material is an organic soil improvement material that can be applied to land as an artificial, or as an organic fertilizer to displace artificial fertilizers from it. So environmentally, it's much better to deal with that organic material through anaerobic digestion than it is to burn it in an energy from waste plant. You're getting electricity from energy from waste.
Vermin?
Vermin have been an issue on the trial. The containers that we use are quite robust, as you can see. The heavy duty plastic, they've got a lockable lid. When the lid locks, it's the same as any kind of common sense. If you leave things lying around, you'll get vermin. If you put things in properly contained, you know, containers, you don't have those issues.
Can I just touch on that? There's residents in Northumberland Close and Ashington got rats chewing through the black bins. And obviously my concern, I wouldn't keep that in my house, and I wouldn't put it in the shade either. For the simple reason that it'll smell in the house, especially in the summer months, but outside I wouldn't want to be attracting rats either. So
we've got pilot scheme that's been going for, we're getting on to its fourth year now, is it?
yeah,
Where we regularly survey people that are using that, and, you know, whilst food waste is something new for Northumberland, it's not new in the UK. There's through the whole of Wales, it's pretty much a standard offer. So we are not seeing issues in terms of that. And you have to remember, this is a weekly collection material, and you can put it into kind of your little kitchen plastic bags if you want to as well, to help with that containment, to keep the odour down or to keep flies up, things such as that. So having it in a plastic bag isn't an issue for the process. That gets separated out as part of the early processing at the plant.
And presumably, you know, people are putting their food waste in the bin in any case, in their ordinary bin at the moment.
It sits a fortnight.
obviously
It sits a week.
the bin connections I don't think they work very well. That causes a lot of problems. A lot of people are struggling with the bins. I mean, I've got the bigger bin, and I could manage with anything smaller than what I've got.
This offers a benefit in the fact that you have that organic fraction that, you know, can smell. You know, it will rot, it will create odours, it will attract flies, it will potentially attract vermin. This gives you the option to separate that out, have it removed on a weekly basis. So it releases capacity in your other bin as well, and it'll avoid those odour problems in your normal bin. So
Yeah,
That's a lot of the positive feedback we've had back from the people that are using the service.
Okay, councillor Dale?
This is the container you'd have inside your home. So that's smaller than the
yeah.
see that one. That's 5 litres.
I'm assuming it'll be just like your vegetable waste and things. Oh, is it like?
It's any
consumable?
food products, so cooked food, vegetable peelings, fruit, remnants of meat, bones, all up and going, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is, I'm not going to knock it, it is good, it's good to try and cut down on the waste and recycle where you can, but I was just kind of worried about the environmental, like health factors
What
on
we
it.
would urge all householders to do is give it a go.
Yeah, oh, well, you're not allowed to.
Thank you, councillor Dale?
Thank you very much. Thank you. Can I just say, first of all, the actual wagons, we did, just to clarify, the wagons we use for the glass recycling, and I'm not quite sure what happened to them, or whether we are still recycling glass collection, which never got to the outside area, but whether it's the same wagons or whether, I just want to know that and see whether there's any possibility of changing or what's happened to them. We can discuss that later, but thank you.
These are small vehicles. These are like a big Isuzu,
Fine.
like a big Isuzu pickup, bigger than an Isuzu pickup, but like a small wagon, a little 7.5 tonners with a sealed back on them.
Yeah, they're contained so that there's no, with food waste, potentially you get liquids
Yeah.
coming off of those materials. So the bespoke refuse collection vehicles specifically designed so that they're contained all of that waste. So if there's any kind of sloppy, wet material, it's contained within that and doesn't leak out onto the road.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that because I don't we'll get some more. Can I just ask you, I know the AD collection points, there are different licenses for all the different areas. So you can't, for instance, well, we've got in Hexham, haven't got a license for food. It's got different licenses. They've all got different types of grades licensing. What I was going to ask you was, and the concerns I have is about the plastic bag we're going to have inside. Now, from what I know about AD, and I haven't been able to got my fingers and know where I can get all the information from, so I've spoken to them. But apparently the plastic in the bag, the plastic actually causes concern when you drop it off wherever it goes, right? Because it actually, if you don't, it then gets spread and it gets into the rivers and everything else and gets onto the land. So what I was told is you use oat made bags. So maybe you could have a look, because it is important if we're actually, recycling food in plastic bags and that's going into the waste disposal, then are you going to have a lot of plastic bags? Because that is a major toxin. If you get that and it goes into the river, I just want to clarify that the whole thing across, because if you don't, they spend their time all there sitting there picking plastic bags. And you can go to an AD area and check, and they'll show you exactly what happens.
So there's three options in terms of how that food waste contained. You can put it directly into those caddies without any contact whatsoever. And obviously that's a bit wetter and soggy. You need to clean your bin out on a regular basis. You can use biodegradable liners. They're more expensive, but they do degrade down naturally through those processes that occur within the AD. But they're cost prohibitive because they're quite expensive in terms of providing them. But that's something that householders can do. Or you can use your general plastic bags, and the general kind of plastic bags that you would have as a kind of kitchen bin liner are fine to use within AD facilities. But out of that facility is effectively taken out that material, and they take that material on for energy from waste combustion and burning generally. So there isn't an issue with doing that. It provides additional containment. Our as you see within the paper, the issue around for us is that should we be providing those bags or not? And our view is, for the first kind of badge to get people going, yes, we would. But then, like you would with any kind of kitchen waste, the onus is on the household to do what they want to do with that going forward and to incur the cost of doing that going forward. We're not providing bags ongoing. as an ongoing burden on a local.
Councillor Lambert?
I understand what you're talking about, but I do think there's a risk of actually ensuring that we are actually providing that which actually, when it goes down to the AD, like wherever it is, but it could be a long way. But there is, you know, it will actually meet as much as you can as far as all the rules and regulations are concerned.
It's
Otherwise,
the AD plant that's taking the plastic bags out before they put it into the actual.
yeah, but it's the actual oh yeah, but it takes ages, otherwise it gets spread if you don't.
Yeah.
So there's all that.
Understand.
Now, well, if you go to Warren Stewart, they do all that. They actually have combustible vehicles and things out of it. So there are people who do a lot of work on that one. But anyway, so I just wanted to know and check all these things have been looked at, and also be interesting to know where you're actually taking it to in the end, and the cost of that. Because I just, you know, it's a bit like the glass thing. I'd like to see this actually working if we are in return.
But the bottom line is that we've got to do this by legislation. So
The
we try to work
2021
out the best way we can do it. And is this, as you well know, it's going out to commercial tender. So, you know, where they take it is their affair, basically, as long as we get value for money for our taxpayers in the county.
Councillor Lambert?
Thank you, Chair. The great thing with Councillor Riddle here is, you know, you're a practical man, country man. You know, luckily I'm probably at an advantage to quite a lot of people here because I have been involved in running an AD plant.
Yeah.
Now, the first thing I would say on the vehicles, why are we not going for dual purpose vehicles, as in you can lift the black bag and the food bin at the same time? There are split vehicles now, and particularly, you know, in rural areas which you can't afford to get to, why have we not looked at using dual purpose vehicles?
I don't know whether our officers have looked at that, but I shall ask them to answer that question.
Yeah, so building up to all of this work around simpler recycling, we've done quite an extensive modelling exercise with support from government, from DEFRA. And we did look at the option of split compartment vehicles, and we looked at a couple of different scenarios for that in terms of collecting the general waste, the dry recycling material and all the materials that we've got to collect. And it just wasn't anywhere near the most efficient and effective way of doing things when you took all of the factors into account. So we have modelled it, and it doesn't provide as good a value for money as the alternative.
And fundamentally, that's due to the rural nature of the county. When you start looking at when kind of split compartment vehicles collecting different materials, no matter what you do, you'll always end up filling one side before the other. So you're always then taking part loads. And if you think food waste has to be collected on a weekly cycle, none of the other materials will be collected on a weekly cycle either. So even when we looked at, can we have like a small modular unit on a standard bin wagon, that didn't stack up either in terms of the logistics of it. It just didn't work on a more rural area.
It's a really sad question, but it's considered.
Well, like I said, I do come from a practical background, and obviously there are commercial operations, you know, where I came from, we had a very big business beside us who were running these dual purpose vehicles, bringing it to a big commercial. You know, they were picking up mainly from catering, you know, things, but they had split compartments in these lorries, so they were doing both at the same time. So it just seemed the cost of running these individual vehicles with staff and timetables and everything else and fitting it in, you know, thinking ahead.
If you think
we're not talking about big quantities.
If you think of the kind of collections that they're undertaking, and if you look at like the recyclable collections alongside that, these vehicles will be doing in excess of 2,000 households per collection round. That will collect, we think, just slightly less than 3 tonnes. A refuse collection vehicle that we have will be doing best part of 11 tonnes, and it'll be collecting from about max 1,200, 1,400 properties. So even just the logistics of how many households you have to go past, and the tonnages don't work on those kind of arrangements in accounts like that.
I'm sure you've done the work, but I'm just saying that there are commercial organisations that can make it work, and particularly with the rural nature of the county. It's just I know from our own you know, we live in a very rural village, but, you know, we're going to be talking about very small quantities.
So the question is like Greg says, a good one. And I think the difficulty you have always with waste services is there's no kind of right way of doing it or no definite way of doing it. There's so many different permutations of how you can collect things, what different materials you can collect, what things do you collect together, how often do you collect them. That's why it's really important to do a lot of modelling of different options to try and pin down which things work and which things don't, peculiar to the nature of the area that you work in. And this is what we've done for the last 4 or 5 years to get to where we are today.
The modelling was done with the knowledge of what we had from quite a long period of trial.
The trials have been instrumental in providing us with actual, real good data that we've got confidence in, that it's not from some other urban area that might not pan out in Northumberland. We know it works, so it's worked for the last 4 years.
Thank you. Councillor Alcazar, Nelly?
Thank you. Just wondering if the bins are made from recycled materials. Are the bins made from recycled materials?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it was in the specification we put out in the market. So they're made from recycled HDPE plastic, and they can be recycled as well.
Thank you. Councillor Smith?
Yeah, speaking of someone who already recycles a lot of his food waste because I've got 3 compost bins. You are talking here about recycling household waste.
Yeah.
Have you got any idea about commercial establishment, restaurants, care homes, hospitals? I said must generate a lot more.
Yeah, so earlier this year, we actually launched a commercial food waste service and went out to the market to start getting that kind of commercial material. So we do now offer a commercial food waste service. Initially, we offered that to schools to ensure they could be compliant with the new requirements of the legislation, but we've quickly expanded that to a number of other customers now. What's the number of customers now?
We've got 85
because we've got 85 customers, and that will kind of wash its face this year, and then hopefully from next year start to make us a profit.
Okay, Councillor Sisford again?
Yeah, just 2 or 3 quick ones, if you don't mind, Chair. First of all, the funding that you've received, which is obviously not what you wanted, is manpower included in that?
Yes, it's
So it covers the employment of staff for year 1 or ongoing costs?
The funding we've received to date is 2 different elements. So we've got the capital new burdens funding, which is purely just for those containers, things such as that. We've also received what the class is the transitional funding, which is basically just on the other side of 800,000 quid's worth of revenue funding to facilitate the implementation and development of the rounds and delivery of bins to people, doing communication activity, providing materials to households to understand what it's all about. Some of that's been used for staffing because we already had recruited a team to support the delivery of this, because it's a massive piece of work, as I'm sure you can imagine. So whilst what the government gave us was kind of categorised in different things, that's just all we get is a pot of funding, and we then make best use of that. We haven't used it quite the same as what they'd intended. We've put more effort into some of that modelling work. We're obviously doing the communications activity and building up on that and working towards that. And likewise, we haven't spent anything on delivery yet. We haven't delivered any bin, but we will be out of that funding. What we haven't had is the confirmation of what revenue funding we're going to be getting as the ongoing cost of running the service.
So you're expecting revenue funding, are you?
Yeah, we expect there's a commitment from government to provide new burdens revenue funding to support the delivery of the service, and that will be for the running of the vehicles, so your fuel costs, operates lights, all that kind of stuff, and your staff. Yeah.
Now, because this is a legal requirement, if we don't get the money in the appeal, are we therefore going to have to take it out of our own budget because it's a legal obligation? Eventually, we're going to have to fund this ourselves. Is that the case? And also, it says part of the legal obligation is that includes all 5.6. I'll see if I can get the exact word of it.
All households.
Well, yeah, all households. So therefore, that's your remote households, which of course at the moment you're using the TEEP assessment to. And I can understand why, by the way, get the best value for money at the moment. But if the legal part says all households, I presume you won't be able to use a TEEP assessment and you'll have to find extra funding on top of that again.
Well, sort of two answers to that question, Councillor. Under the TEEP, the technical, environmental and economic grounds, you've got to weigh up whether it's economic, but also whether it's CO2 economic, to send a vehicle to Kielder or somewhere, to pick up at least 1.3 kilograms if you're lucky. That's one side of it. The other is that I think they'll be hard pushed to start and prosecute councils or local authorities for not doing it. But I can't say they won't. But if they've said they're going to provide new burdens funding, and then it's £1.5 million short, which is a heck of a lot. And on top of the fact that we've lost the rural service delivery grant money as well, to now take another £1.5 million out of our budget is really going to be very punitive. If we've got to do it, we've got to do it. But at the moment, we're hoping that we're going to get some money from DEFRA. And, let's see what we get. We've got a contingency at the moment in option one. It's quite a large contingency at the minute. But we need to see how things actually pan out on the ground.
So what is your actual, when you try, what is your paper by residents? I mean, because
40%.
That's 40%. So I think this one's 61% or something, it covers. So you're expecting 40% of the 61%, if you like, to take that on board. That's
but when they've done the costs of the options, they've used the evidence from the trials already.
Therefore, will the money go further if you only get a 4% take on 61%, which is what's
based on that? We get fewer people taking up.
It's based on the 40%.
So
It's not based on 100%.
Sorry, Chair, but you don't have any
crystal ball. No.
No. But I mean, if the government won't come in and say, well, 24%, that's not good enough. What you want to do then?
The obligations that we offer this, provide the service to all households, it's not for all households to actually do it. It's not mandated to households to have to use the service.
So you do your best, and that's what the table.
We're providing access to a service that's still discretionary for them to make use of.
So finally, Chair, if I can just give me a bit of leeway here, it's going to give you a 3.65, I think you said. Is that based on a full take up of 61%? Or is that based on your 40% of your 61%?
That's based on a 1.3 kilograms per.
Actually, as much as that.
No, that's
that
is right.
On the 40%. Yeah.
So the other thing just to clarify is that the obligation is to all households and provide to all households, but the TEEP assessment isn't something that's kind of separate to that.
No.
You provide it to all households and it's subject to that TEEP assessment. So you have to still look at, is it technically, environmentally, economically practicable to provide a service to those, for those reasons that Councillor Wills articulated. There's no point trying to provide a service to better the environment if you're travelling and burning gallons of diesel to get there. That's way more damaging to the environment than actually what you're trying to do in the end result. So it is that kind of common sense approach. And the key thing that we've done on this is that the modelling adoption is where we would say that's the kind of legally compliant under TEEP kind of end result that we would hope to get to at some point. What we would want is government funding to get us there sooner rather than later.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that leeway.
I think the other thing, Chair, is that, some people won't want extra bins. You don't have to have it. That's the thing. It's got to be offered.
Okay, Councillor Dale.
I think maybe Johnny put a thing. I mean, it's 2021 regulation. Maybe we should all have a good look at it, see what it actually said. I haven't read it all. If it's there for us to see, that'll be an answer to all these questions, because obviously there's all kinds of opportunities or things you don't have to do. And just to add on to basically that funding, I know the rural grant has been cut, but there has been further funding that's come in instead. So you might want to have a look at that funding. I'll find it for you. It came in last year at the same time. So can I just go on to the collection? I'm being just because think about that. The collection areas, it's always been started with Morcus, and then gone to Blythe, Ashington, Ponteague, right? And the West's always not been included. I'm just saying that from the West point of view. But the other thing is at present time, we have our brown bins or green bins in Tyndale emptied every other week. So all our food, now we have minimal, but all our food is recycled every other week. Has there been any justification in saying that you will roll out the new project every other week instead of every week? I'm just asking a question, or is that in the 2021 regulation? Because if it was, you could then halve your costs, revenue costs. But I'm saying, you know, big pickup, but I don't know whether that's written in the regulations. It's got to be.
It's written, it's got to be weekly.
Is that in the regulation? That's what I'm asking. I haven't seen the regulations, so it'd be helpful to have a look.
It's in the papers here. It says weekly. It has to be weekly.
But I think probably, like I said here, I mean, I'm obviously involved in. I'm not personally, but I haven't got an interest here, but in the south. But actually, the joint usage of vehicles and things like that. And I wonder if we're looking at practicalities of. I'm just talking about the glass, for instance, curbside glass, thing that's all been, you know, just hasn't happened in the rural areas and all these things. That we're taking each bit piecemeal rather than looking at the whole picture. I know you're going to say, oh, you can't and everything else, but it is a thing really to say in the end, because it's all very well, as you said. It's all very well to say you're going to add another bin, and that's fine if you live in a nice house, great, hide everything away.
Yeah.
And imagine where things would be horrendous.
I know where you're coming from, but, you know.
And everybody have one point of collection bottom of the street.
If legislation comes down from above that says we've got to do these things, we've got to be seen to try to do them. And there'll be some more legislation later this year, which is going to mean, you know, we're going to have to separate glass, and you know, that's actually coming. So there will be a paper coming to Cabinet later in the year, probably the back end of October.
Is that within this whole legislation, the 2021?
Yeah.
Because it maybe it'd be helpful if we did have a copy, then we maybe think outside, maybe. So I'll be very boring, so I'll read it.
I'm sure it'll be online.
And it's something that we've chair actually, isn't it?
Could we it just helps us understand what the legislation has.
We can circulate that, the link to legislation online. Councillor Spittle?
St East Northumberland was selected presumably because of the high number of residential. Yeah. Did we take into account the demographics of those areas? Because there's a high proportion of estates that are frequented by takeaways and fast food, which provides very little food waste. The demographics of those types of estates means that they're not preparing food, not got natural food waste like peelings and so on, and very little food on the plate to actually put into the bin. So are we actually focusing on the wrong thing? Are we going to get more take up in smaller towns where there's less takeaways than we would on these large estates where we know they're reliant on, well, the low earners, the people with the least money, always the easiest way. That's one of the things. The other thing was, I'm surprised we're not separating peelings from cooked food. Being a gardener, I've been using a caddy like that for about 15 years now, probably longer. So I'm a bit reluctant to throw that into the.
Yeah. Well, composting, as you know, isn't just dead simple, is it? You've got to know what you're doing with your compost bin. And, you know, we did do a trial with offering compost bins to some of the more remote areas. And, you know, we did have a trial with it. But unless you do it properly, it doesn't work, as you know. But, you know, anybody that wants to compost their peelings, I'm sure that will, you know, it's great for everybody, great for us, great for the environment and everything else. I'll ask Paul to answer the other question about the difference in, you know, demographics.
So as part of the trial that's been ongoing for, like I said, best part of 4 years, when we set that up, it's about 5,000 households. We particularly looked at matching the demographics of the people on the trial, so it was representative of the demographics of the county as a whole. So there's some more affluent areas in there, there's some less affluent areas. It's a right mishmash as we would expect, because the county is a bit of a mishmash in terms of different economic and socio-economic groups. And that's why it's really important to do that for the very reasons that you've articulated, because you then get a much better flavour as to what you're going to get from the actual rollout of this once you do that on a larger scale. So that's what we've based all the modelling on, is that actual hard data based on those economic, socio-economic groupings.
But if it's voluntary, not compulsory process, you're less likely to have a take up in those.
It's hard,
than you are with.
it is hard to judge that, to be fair, because there are areas, and parts of Bedlington is probably a good example, where the uptake was low at the start with, but the more we've gone at it, the better that's got, and it's actually improving going forward. So people with anything, it's a bit like grass is always greener, isn't it? If you see somebody else has got something, and like, why haven't I got that? I would like to have a look at that. There's probably a little bit of that going on as well. People seeing things and wanting to participate in it, but didn't necessarily want to do it from the outset.
And the last thing was going on was, notice there was a high cost for the, I think it was Amble for the Bay, it was about 350,000 or something. And then we were after there were 80 or 90. What's that high cost for the Amble? It's not reflected elsewhere.
I was higher, yeah. It's just the way the site's set up at the minute. It's just been very basic upgrades that have to take place at Hexham and Westleigh, and it's quite a small site, so it needs a lot more work to build it. And it also needs to have an impermeable surface put in under animal byproduct regulations, which isn't there now.
Okay. Any more questions? No? Well, thank you very much. A very interesting report, and let's hope it rolls out smoothly. Right, so we'll have a note. Next on the agenda is the work programme on page 55 to 60. What anything to say on that?
Yeah, so the work programme is obviously in draft, with this being the first meeting of the committee. Now, it's important to say that the work programme actually belongs to you, belongs to the committee. The issues that have been listed have rolled over essentially from previous years. So if I quickly just go through them just to make sure that they're aligned with your priorities also. In September, we've got 2 items listed: Places for People Leisure. They are the company that runs the leisure facilities in the county and the leisure centre, that sort of thing. And they will come to talk to you about the performance over the previous year and forthcoming initiatives going into next year. We also have the Fire and Rescue Service Improvement Report for the HMI inspections. That's coming in September. What we try and do with this committee is, as has been demonstrated with the previous report, is we're trying to limit the items on the agenda to 2, because it tends to be that every item on the agenda, most members have got questions that they want to ask or comments. And generally speaking, it only takes an hour to get through one item. So we tend to stick with 2 items on the agenda. But obviously, that's not to say that you always have to do that. If there is something that's a particular priority, that's time sensitive, you might want to try and squeeze that on. But that's what as a default, we try and keep it to 2 items. In October, we got a report, again, an annual update on the library service. And you'll see that there's only 1 item currently listed, so you've got the opportunity there to put something in. In November, we've got the Northumberland Infrastructure Funding Statement. Now, that is all about how the council deals with its Section 106 funding agreements. So it gives you an update on what the council are doing with those. It's an annual report. They have to publish by the 31st of December, I think. So it always comes to you first before it does that. Sorry, are we going to put in there? You going to put in?
Just listening.
All right. In January, we've got as part of the BEST review programme, they did some work on regulation and enforcement. They reported to the committee last January, and that committee said, can you come back in a year to tell us how you've been getting on? So I'll put it in there again. But again, the work programme is yours. If that's not a priority for you, then obviously let me know and I'll take it off. And I've left it blank. I could have filled it in very easily, but I am obviously aware that you have your own priorities and the issues that you want to add to yourselves.
If any members do have something they'd like us to consider, let us know and we can program that in.
And just finally, Chair, following the draft work programme, I've also put a schedule on the back of that to show you what the committee did last year. Because obviously there were a number of issues that you've come to the council to sort out, and this really shows you what the committee did last year, so that you're not duplicating what's already been done. That's not to say that you couldn't revisit some of these issues if you wanted a further update.
Okay. Thank you. Right, and then finally, urgent business. I've not been told of any. So, sorry, Councillor Dunn.
If there's anybody who wants, because I'm the only person left from last year through the sound and everything else. And it was just to highlight that the highways maintenance was a very important issue and will continue to be so. And whether people are interested to have that looked at. The other one was the storm resilience, which came in with the emergency plan and resilience, etc., which actually is very informative and helpful for members, because a lot of people are new and they won't know anything about the background of any of this at all. And it'd be interesting to find out whether we could have somebody who'd come along and inform you how the business continuity goes over the resilience, whether it's storm harrowing or emergency plan. And it is important that people understand, because we're there to represent people. So it's just the important things that were there. I'm not saying any of the others aren't important, but certainly those are the ones that are very sort of highlighted all the time and are part of everyday life, whether it be potholes or whatever. It's something that we need to speak and know and address and make sure that we all understand and ensure that the work is ongoing to better what has been in place so far. Because we did have a look at the BEST programme on highways, for instance, and that came out with all kinds of things. We had a long conversation about that came here, and it really was so important, interesting and informative. And I think that, to have a look at that, because we're answerable to the electorate, and actually, certainly when we've got budget allocations coming up and everything's going to be difficult to know exactly what we think we need and ensure that it is covered in the budget. So there's all kinds of things you can look at. You look at performance indicators, you can look at all kinds of things in any of these programmes. But I think it'd be, because we're a new committee, I think, we're going to start for 4 years. Might as well do some hard work and be informative too.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dodd.
Yeah, on the resilience, I brought up 3-4 years ago about the ash dieback situation. And, I do watch the trees on my farm thinking that worse or better. I just wondered which scrutiny committee would look at that situation, because, if we do get another storm Arwen, and we all talk about if Arwen, there's still trees down from Arwen. Are our beloved ash trees in a worse condition now, or have they just levelled it sort of half dead? And I look at them and I think, has that tree changed? Well, or is it, that some have, as in there are a lot that are further down the line in dying, but there's still the odd leaf on some. and have some sort of got over it. I don't know where we are with that.
Well, I think we are looking at the woodland strategy, which I think is going to come at some point. So that will be part of that, I think. We actually did mention that earlier, we discussed that is in progress.
Tree and woodland strategy.
Tree and woodland strategy.
Tree and woodland strategy.
Which is Ash type.
It's been wobbling for a few years, but it's due.
Yeah,
Very shortly.
it's being prepared.
I just think people have a conversation, everybody's got new ideas, got new councillors. Then it's found that, what's the facts in this scrutiny committee tend to reference. And if you think there's something you want to highlight, whether it's on here or not.
Okay.
You always say no, won't you?
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you very much for that. There's no urgent business, so I now close the meeting. Thank you very much, everybody.